And we're back with the program. Thank you so much for sticking around and enjoying what we have going on here with the pop culture cosmos and the PCC multiverse. We truly appreciate it. You know, I haven't been able to talk too much about this show on our show, but it's something that over the past few years has definitely become a defining show within the realm of pop culture, and that is The Walking Dead. AMC's big hit over the past 8 seasons. It's done tremendously well over that span of time, but there's kind of like some watershed moments right now as far as not only what went on in the finale for season 8 and season 8 as a whole, but also as well the future of the series as well. So I reached out, and who better to talk to me than one of the leading administrators for the Walking Dead fan base, which is one of the largest Walking Dead fan groups anywhere you can go. It's available on Facebook as a page or a group. It's the Walking Dead fan base. If you are a hardcore Walking Dead fan, you got to go ahead and sign up and interact with the over 50,000 individuals that are already a part of it. And I'll tell you what, it's great to have her here with us tonight. It is Daphine Matthew. How are you today?
Good evening, Gerald. I'm doing fine. How is everybody out there in Las Vegas, right?
Exactly. It's now 90 degrees every single day, and it is actually getting to be Las Vegas weather really shortly. But we are distracted by the Golden Knights and their success in their inaugural season. So it's great. But once hockey season is over, we're just all going to be grumbling and mumbling about, it's hot again, 110, 120, whatnot. Yuck. But it is. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I don't like that kind of weather, but it actually has been warming up on the East Coast. So we're getting some nice weather now, but 2 weeks ago it was snowstorm. So go figure.
My goodness. Yeah. Well, we're coming into a beautiful spring, but the actual season for The Walking Dead is over. Season 8 has been completed. It did get completed with a final battle. I'll put that in quotations between the long-awaited, final confrontation between leaders Negan from the Saviors and Rick from obviously our hero over the course of time. Rick Grimes over the course of 8 seasons has been such a integral part of the series. Your thoughts on the way season 8 wrapped up, and also as well season 8 as a whole, because I know you have some thoughts on that as well.
Oh, I do. As far as the finale go, I think the finale was done. It was done pretty well. It could have been longer. I think a lot of people were hoping that the final battle would have been longer and a little bit more detailed, but I guess because fear started right after it, or time frames, or whatever, what have you not. It was just a regular 1 hour, 5 minutes episode. But within that time span, they did cover a lot of ground. They resolved the issue. Mostly between Negan and Rick, with the original comic book ending for All Out War, which was Rick slitting Negan's throat and saving him. As regards to Maggie's reaction, I think that was a normal reaction for a woman who just lost her husband. But the twist to it was the last scene between her, Jesus, and Daryl, where it appears that she's plotting something. Now, whether it's
an eternal civil war, perhaps?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I also read the comics, so I pretty much know what happens after All Out War, but I won't give it away because I would like to see how it comes out on the show. But I think a lot of people were a little bit surprised with her reaction. I mean, the grieving widow, that's understandable and all, but for her to actually, her Jesus, especially Jesus, because we haven't seen Jesus. It's like he started showing up in season 6. We didn't see him most of 7, most of 8, and then all of a sudden, in the very last episode, he's sitting there with Maggie plotting to take action against Rick along with Daryl. Daryl, that was very shocking.
Well, obviously that was done for shock factor, but also as well, Jesus, like you said, being suddenly pushed into maybe a forefront role, which is something that is different from the comic books because he has been a stronger, he's had a stronger impact in the comics than the TV show up until this point. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. I mean, it was like a lot of people. One of the posts that was common on the fan base was actually, "Where is Jesus?" I mean, he really. It was like he vanished for like a season and a half. It was like he was there in the beginning. He introduced Rick to the kingdom and to the hilltop, and then it was like you didn't see him much. It was like, okay, this guy is supposed to be an integral character in the storyline. He's actually supposed to be Maggie's confidant, and also, you know, he had more of a role in the comics, and then all of a sudden you don't see him, and it's like, okay, where is this going? Did they do a heat on us and write him out, and we didn't know about it? But then he shows up episode 14 when the hilltop got attacked by Simon, and he killed a couple of reanimated hilltop people. And then in the finale, he was there for a little while. So it was really interesting to see that they have not utilized that character at all throughout his tenure on The Walking Dead. So far, I'll say so far.
So far. And obviously, it looks like he's going to play a larger role on the television series going forward, at least in the interim, because you know how they love to take out main characters at some point in time that are not named Rick Grimes. Speaking of that, there is a couple questions I want to ask you in regards to season 8 and actually the finale as well. But I'll ask you the first one, which I know you mentioned before we went on the air, and that is Rick's son, Carl, or I should say Carl. I heard almost 8 seasons of that. But anyways, Carl's death seemed to have been very polarizing amongst the hardcore contingent out there that are in groups such as yours, which is one of the largest that it's out there. Your thoughts on Carl Grimes' death, and was it necessary, and did it help actually bring everything together for the series?
Carl's death was a shock throughout the Walking Dead communities. It was huge. I mean, it seems like every character before they die, prime example, Abraham, they have some kind of build up before they actually die. You know, something changes within their character over the course of maybe 1 or 2 seasons. And then, you know, unfortunately, you know, eventually this season they're going to die because Abraham, everybody kind of saw it, see it coming, but with Carl, it was like instantaneous. It was like all through season 7, he wanted to kill Negan. He actually went to the sanctuary, found Negan, killed 2 of his men, and he was badass for the whole season. And then all of a sudden, in the beginning of season 8, the first episode, Mercy, he's like kind of laid back, wanting to help people, giving his dad drama about, you know, there's got to be something more. And everybody's like, where did this come from? The course of the season, from the time lapse between season 7 and season 8, there was none. It was just a continuation of season 7. So a lot of people across the Walking Dead communities did not understand that. It was like, what's going on with this kid?
So well, I agree with you on that. The fact that it was, the way they set it up was really difficult to watch. Like you said, there's usually some signs. Like in the case of Sonequa Martin Green, you knew she was taking the job as the head, you know, the star of Star Trek Discovery. So you knew she was going to be knocked off at some point. But with Carl, as we've talked about again before the show deviates when it wants to from the comic books and vice versa. In this case, Carl's still alive in the comic books, if I'm not mistaken.
He's alive. He's well. He's still kicking ass. And it was really shocking when the reveal was made in the mid-season finale that he was actually dead. It was like, wait a minute. Father Gabriel's sick, so maybe there's a chance that Carl won't die. But unfortunately, also as part of being a member of a large Walking Dead community, you do hear things on the outside that kind of like gives you an idea that okay, there was a reason for his death outside the show, and it was just really bad. It was hard. It was hard for a lot of people to take. We a lot of people were in denial for months about okay. At one point, we thought maybe it was a hallucination, because they kept on showing that scene from episode one with Rick under the tree, and he saw mercy prevail over my wrath, and nobody actually understood where did he hear that because he wasn't with Carl when Carl first met Sadiq. He actually ran Sadiq off, so it was like, so when did he hear that? Why is he saying that? Did Carl say something to him? What happened to the kids? So it was like really, really, it's still to this day, after the whole season's been wrapped, there still haven't been given any reason as to exactly what the reason was for killing Carl. There is no, I mean, Scott Gimple promised during the mid-season finale that there was a definitive reason and it would be revealed throughout the course of the remaining episodes. And we didn't get that. It was just like, okay, well, we know the war ended, but what was Carl's role in it? Okay, the letter to Rick was very touching, but it still doesn't explain to. It doesn't give any explanation why he had to die. So it's still, I will say that death in itself was one of the biggest and most traumatic deaths of all the Walking Dead. I mean, his mother died. That was very traumatic. Everybody,
and he was supposed to live because she wanted him to beat this thing. Is that correct as well?
Yeah, he was supposed to live for two reasons. One was that his mother's dying wish, and the other one was that he eventually was supposed to take over. I mean, next season is supposed to be, and everybody knows this because it's been teased, the Whisperer storyline, which was Carl's coming of age storyline, and all of a sudden now it'll happen, but it's not going to happen the way it did in the comics. So now we're the communities on the whole are left with a big gap with, well, how are they going to play this out? Because there is nobody close to Carl's age on the show that could carry that storyline. So I guess they're going to leave out the Carl part of the Whisperer storyline and just hopefully it'll be shorter, because one of the biggest complaints about season 8 was that All Out War took the whole season. And Scott Gimple said very early on, before it even aired, that All Out War would not take a whole season. So there's a lot of, how should I say it, irk with Scott Gimple about that. Yeah, there was, oh God, there was like 100,000 signature petition to fire him. He didn't get fired, but he's no longer involved with the show on a day-to-day basis. So that's
Scott Gimple, the showrunner, who was the showrunner for The Walking Dead, who, like you said, was bumped up to executive producer role as far as over both the series The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. As far as now that the great actor Lenny James, who does a tremendous performance. I love Morgan as far as his character is concerned. And he's now transitions over to try and spice things up for The Walking Dead. But we'll go into that a little bit later. Yeah. I want to ask you one last question on season 8, because I'm going to be honest with you. It was a really big letdown for me on this all-out war that actually never really happened. It was actually pretty much Eugene coming up to save the day. But I will ask you this. I know a lot of the community was also disappointed as well. Was it a good move to, in this case, follow what the comic books are doing and actually save Negan, just get his throat slashed from Rick, similar to what happened in the comic books, and end up the punishment is that he's going to be locked in a cage to see this civilization grow and prosper. Meanwhile, just his presence being the antagonist for individuals, like you said, like Daryl, Jesus, and most importantly, Maggie, who is the leader of the Hilltop at this point in time. Do you think it was a good call to make to follow the actual storyline of the comic books, or do you think they should have deviated in a different direction?
Me personally, I think it was great that they didn't kill him. I think for two reasons. One of them is that keeping Negan alive was the thing that changed Rick, because as we saw Rick's character change over the course of season 7 after Glenn and Abraham got killed. And then actually it goes further back because Rick was sort of Neganish in seasons 5 and 6 when they were on the road going to Alexandria, even going back to the prison. His whole stance was, after they got off the farm, and every community they encountered was that if they don't step in line, we'll just take them over. So he was sort of Neganish, but he wasn't exactly Negan to that point of brutality like Negan was. I mean, Rick was brutal. Rick killed some people, and it was not pretty to see him kill them, but he did have some characteristics of Negan. But I think for Rick personally, after losing Carl, after losing his wife, after losing people he loved, his so-called right-hand man in Glenn, his enforcer. Well, Daryl's more like an enforcer type, but he had Abraham, and unfortunately, Abraham's comic character was better than on the show. His character didn't develop fully like his comic character. He was at one point, instead of Daryl, the person Rick went to for strategic advice in the comics, whereas Daryl was on the show. So basically, with the finale, with Rick not killing him, it was sort of a redemption for Rick himself too. He had to take a step back. I mean, he read Carl's letter. Everybody saw the episode where he read Carl's letter, and he still wanted to kill Negan. He didn't care what Carl said. If Carl couldn't stop him, Carl's dying words and wishes could not stop Rick from killing Negan. Actually, I would say seeing Negan vulnerable in that moment when he begged for 10 seconds and you saw Negan's expression, like, okay, because he knew Negan loved Carl. They had a very weird relationship built on mutual respect, Carl and Negan. So Rick used that to his advantage when he begged for 10 seconds and he said, "For Carl, please." And I think in that moment, Rick realized by killing Negan, he would just become another monster like Negan. And he couldn't do that. That's never been Rick's nature from when he woke up in the hospital until now. I mean, he killed Shane. Yeah, everybody knows that. But that was because he had no choice. So I think for him, killing Negan would have been too easy. It would have just been one act and it would have been over. And then it would have been like, okay, so where does the group go from him? So having Negan in the prison now is basically a reminder of Rick of what the world was during All Out War, and since Negan came on the scene, and also what the world can be afterwards. So I think them following that comic arc and not killing Negan was the right thing to do. I'm going to tell you right now, I am of the minority, because if you look at any Facebook group,
I thought you would say that.
Even today, nearly 2 weeks after the finale aired, people are still upset that Negan is still alive. But he does have, I'm not going to say, Negan will never be fully redeemed. And Negan is really not truly a bad guy. If you looked at the governor and you looked at Negan, the governor was, in my opinion, was way worse than Negan. He killed everybody. He didn't care about anything or anybody. He killed all of his people. So basically, Negan he was not evil personified as some of these bad guys we've had on the show. He did things in his mind, he believed it was for a reason. He thought this was the way to save people by being, how should I say, the big man, and having people in line and having his harem of wives. I mean, there was some parts of Negan nobody would like. I mean, his own mother may have not even liked him with some of the things he said.
This is
but
true.
He had a means to. He thought his way was a means to an end. Now, mind you, when he found out what Simon did, when he found out Simon killed all the men at Oceanside, when Simon killed all the Heapsters, he made it right. He killed Simon. So basically, he wasn't all about eradicating whole groups. He wanted them to work for him, but his way of introduction left much to be desired for the world at large. So I thought it was a good move. I thought it was a smart move, and I'm sure until October, when people see why Negan was still, why Rick let Negan lead the debates all summer. That's going to be the whole debate all summer. Why Carl is dead and why is Negan still alive? So that's what you're going to see across Facebook the whole summer.
This is true, but I will say this, that going forward, he's going to be just like in the comic books then, in my opinion, be a source of antagonism for obviously Maggie and the rest of the individuals involved, just being there as a symbol sitting in that cage, but also a source of manipulation. Instead of manipulating Carl at this point, he's just going to be manipulating somebody else. And there's a big future going forward since he was left to be alive for Negan as far as The Walking Dead is concerned going forward. Once again, I'm with Daphine Matthew. She is one of the administrators for one of the largest fan groups that are out there for The Walking Dead. It's the Walking Dead fan base. You can actually catch their page and also their group as well on Facebook. That's
the Walking Dead fan base.
That's right. Sorry, I was interrupted. Sorry, there was a loud noise on my end here in Vegas. It is the Walking Dead fan base page and group on Facebook. Combined, there's over 70,000 people that do enjoy the Walking Dead fan base. You got to go ahead and sign up today and be a part of that great fan base that loves the Walking Dead so much. So I wanted to go ahead. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I said we certainly do. We are a totally dedicated group.
Indeed, they are. And I actually was looking at it, like I said, for a while, and just really impressed with exactly everyone in the community as far as they get together and share their opinions and ideas constructively about The Walking Dead with, like you said, various opinions on not only what's going on in season 8, but the future going forward for the show as well. And that's one thing I wanted to talk about right now is the future for The Walking Dead. I know we talked a little bit about before we went on the air about the ratings, which obviously for a TV show is the be all end all. The ratings for the finale for season 8 actually is at the lowest point since season 1 and is actually virtually half of what it was just 3 years ago. I want to hear your opinion about what's going on for the show going forward. What fundamental changes do you think they need to make, if any? And then also as well, because The Walking Dead is the most expensive, television show that's out there as far as production value and things of that nature. Does it need to stay at this level, or can it go even lower as far as the ratings are concerned? Because there's obviously a sweet syndication deal that they have now in place that helps support The Walking Dead, at least at this point going forward.
Right. Well, the ratings. The ratings have been on the decline, like you said, since I will say the end of season 6. A lot of people blame the introduction of the Negan character and also King Ezekiel because they thought they were too over the top. I don't think they were too over the top. I think it's just that they were new and they were, how should I say it, charismatic and somewhat flamboyant at times. People didn't grasp to take a liking to them right away.
I know with the Negan, as far as his initial entry, I know with him killing Abraham and Glenn right off the bat, I know that's something that The Walking Dead likes to do, but I just know from the reaction at that point in time, it turned a lot of people off. I'm not going to be dishonest with you on that.
No, I agree with that. The violence of their deaths had never been done on the show. I mean, we've seen over the course of the years, we've seen very graphic deaths. Noah, for instance, Noah getting killed in
And that turnstile, I remember that. Yeah. But
And the revolving doors. That was
yeah, and the revolving door. You're right, and I remember that as like, you know, part of his face ripping off and whatnot. And
and
I will tell you this with Negan, it just to me was an issue. I think, like you said, we had never seen that level of violence on television as a whole, from what I'm able to, you know, what I've ever seen.
well, we hadn't seen it. How should we say, a person on a person, as opposed to a walker tearing up people. That's expected. I mean, we've seen that in our culture since Night of the Living Dead.
True, true, true,
So
very true.
basically, for a human to enact such violence on another human turns a lot of people off. Also because it was Glenn. But the backstory with Glenn was that he actually asked for his comic book death. They weren't originally going to do it. They were going to kill Maggie instead, and that's something I knew back then. But he went to the producers and said that for the storyline, and he was correct because look, 2 years later, people are still mad over it. We still have posts every day. Why is Glenn dead? Why didn't Negan kill Glenn and Abraham? Um, and that's just the effect of his character on communities as a whole. He was a beloved character, just like Herschel was, just like Abraham was. So basically, you know, with him dying so brutally, it still is it have an impact on the show 2 years later. But it was the violence of it that turned a lot of people. If there was a lot of petitions to, and for a while there, they did do that. They toned down the violence on The Walking Dead throughout season 6, 4, up until No Way Out, when Jesse and her whole family got killed. So for a couple of episodes, they did take heed and kind of filter out the violence, even though it was still there. It wasn't so graphic anymore. As far as the ratings go and how it's impacting The Walking Dead, there are several things that's happened over the course of the 2 years, the 2 seasons, that's really impacted the ratings. I mean, I know the violence impacted of Glenn and Abraham did impact season 7. But the other things were the introduction of so many new characters at once. It was like we got swarmed with characters. We had the Oceanside community. We had the Hilltop. We had the Kingdom. We had the Heapsters. We had all these characters in play, but their storylines were never developed. So it was like we were getting thrown all these new faces and no explanation behind why they were there. I mean, you get bits and pieces like, okay, the conflict between the Kingdom and the Saviors was a constant throughout their entire season 7. We saw a lot of that action between them. The Hilltop, we saw a couple of episodes, but then we only saw the Oceanside community one episode. It was like they were there, and then, well, we didn't see them again until episode 11, 12 of this year. So it was like we got all these faces, no storyline. The storylines were inconsistent in season 7. They went through a long period in season 7 after Glenn and Abraham's death where there was no action. It was like, okay, we saw Carol, we saw Maggie, we saw Daryl in the cell, but it was like it people got bored because it was like, okay, so where is all this going to join up and become a real storyline? So, and then Rick running around being a scared chicken for 12 episodes didn't help.
This is true. He was criticized for that as well. So I want to. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So I want to close it out with this, as far as your thoughts on the future of The Walking Dead, because I think if something has to change, when you lose over half your audience in less than 3 years, that's not a great sign for the show's longevity. And like I said, with the exorbitant cost to make each and every episode of The Walking Dead, it needs the support of a high-rated, high, at least decent ratings. And these are first world problems because it's still one of the most watched shows on television. I mean, yeah, if you were to ask, like, for instance, I'll throw Timeless out there. If you asked the producers of Timeless, hey, would you like 7.8 million people watching your show? They'd just be jumping around doing backflips saying yes. So, but I know with AMC writing the checks, it is still something that they're keeping an eye on for the long term. And obviously, there's going to be some type of breaking point if the ratings continue to decline. So, I just want to hear your thoughts to close out our conversation. I'll tell you what, it's been so great talking to you as far as that, everything on The Walking Dead. But I want to hear from a true fan, because I'm only a casual fan. But I want to hear from a true fan that is hardcore what you think The Walking Dead's future needs to be in order to recapture that audience and people like me who are those in and out type viewers, which need to be, again, at some point in time, be glued back to watching it every Sunday night.
Okay, well, what would make The Walking Dead go back to its glory days? Okay, they started slipping, I'll say, after season. It started a little bit in season 6 because they were in Alexandria, and again, the storylines just going different ways with the Morgan story, the Enid story, Glenn and the terrible dumpster dive. You know, the biggest problem, and this is consistent from all the groups that I communicate with, is that the writing is the biggest problem. Directors only direct what they get. Actors only act the scripts they are given. And the biggest problem seems to be across the board is the writing of the episodes. It was just chaos. It's just been chaotic the last 2 seasons. It's just too much given in one season. I mean, we had 5 different storylines going on in season 7, and then All Out War. All Out War, the reason why they lost so many people in season 8 itself wasn't because of the action. It was great action. The first half of the season was great, in my opinion. It was just that it was just too much dragging on of All Out War. I mean, most of the conflicts you saw it over the course of one season, and then they cycled back to it. The next biggest example was the governor. He first appeared in season 3. He was there a couple of episodes. He kidnapped Glenn and Maggie, and they moved away from that. We didn't see him again until season 4 when the conflict was finally finished. That worked. Seasons 3 and season 4 were the best seasons in CWD history, with the exception of season 5. That's one problem I see, is the writing. The other is the killing off of main characters for shock value. It's just they're just killing off people now just because they can. I mean, like I said earlier in the beginning of our dialogue, there was no reason to kill off Carl other than the external conflicts, contract dispute, money disputes. There was really no real reason to kill off this character. He's still alive and well and kicking. If you want to save money, then get rid of some of the garbage people. I mean, you have 22 featured series regulars, and that's a lot of money. I mean, AMC, The Walking Dead is still very profitable, and I know people are concerned a lot about ratings and that, you know, shows live or die based on the ratings, but The Walking Dead is different in that aspect where that they don't survive solely on ratings. They have their conventions, they have merchandise. So as long as The Walking Dead is really, really profitable for AMC, I don't see it going anywhere. Now, the biggest problem is characters. Andrew Lincoln will probably leave sooner rather than later. He's been doing this for 8 years. He has expressed, and it's been a lot in the internet, if you Google anything about him, that, you know, he's definitely talking about an end to Rick's story on The Walking Dead. He's been doing this show since he's been in his early 30s, so, you know, unfortunately for these actors and actresses, time is their enemy, not ours. We would
And
love to
also
see the
the fact that Denai Guerrera is now going to be appearing in two of the largest movies this year. I mean, she is looking to be a breakout star. She was a awesome in the Black Panther, and her character Michonne, which is a favorite on the TWED, as much as people would like her to stay, I'm sorry, she's gonna be probably at this point in time one of the highest grossing actresses or actors for that for any of that
yeah,
of the year. So how long
yeah.
is she gonna stay?
I don't see her saying McLean. And actually, that's very interesting that you brought her up in particular because there was an article today that she's actually getting a show somewhere, maybe in Las Vegas. Somebody has backed a play or something because she had did a play once last year with her co-star from the Black Panther. She did a small off-Broadway play because she's also a writer. And somebody just greenlighted another project for her. So now she's filming Xfinity War Part 2. She's filming Black Panther 2. She's doing a play. She don't have time for The Walking Dead too much anymore.
So and that's the thing. So I ask you this: will the TWD survive and thrive without a Rick and Michonne leading the way? I think that's a tough one because I know for a lot of fans that would be really tough.
Me being a hardcore fan that I am, I wouldn't want it to. I really wouldn't. If those characters are in risk of leaving, it would be better for them to end on a high note than to suffer more ratings losses because of the fact that main characters that we have come to love over the course of 8 seasons are no longer there. I think Norman Reedus actually said it in an interview when they found out that Chandler Riggs was going to be killed off, that, if you wanted to make different shows, a different show, you should have made a different show instead of killing off the core characters. So if that's the route, they might lose Lauren Cohan this year. She still has no contract. She actually has filmed a pilot for ABC for another show, and
maybe that's why they're building the internal Civil War storyline, is that they're trying to find an out for her.
Yeah, so that's kind of difficult. I mean, they might lose her just because of that. So it's like you're gonna start losing your core characters. In my opinion, my thing would be make Ted your last season. I know they want to merge Fear the Walking Dead and The Walking Dead. That's why Lenny James is over there now to kind of like be the catalyst that brings them to The Walking Dead. So if that's what you plan to do, and I know it's going to start happening next year during the Whisperer War, that's inside information I just shared, by the way.
Well, thank you for doing so. I appreciate it.
So if that is their plan, what's going to happen is that I would say end it after 10 seasons. I mean, everybody is going to miss the show when it does eventually decide that they're going to cancel it and they're going to end The Walking Dead. But I would rather them end it sooner rather than later than to drag it on and, how should I say, destroy the memory of what we have. Instead of giving us a bad ending, let us go with the pleasantries and the joyful memories we have of the show as it stands. Even with 2 bad seasons, I mean, it's still a better show, and it's still, as far as ratings, up there with Game of Thrones, which is right now the highest. Well, when it was airing last year, it was the highest viewed show last year. So it's still up there. It's still competitive, but don't give the fans the Lost ending. If you ever looked at the show Lost, everybody knows how that ended.
Oh, yeah. And you're right. I totally agree with you that you don't want the TWD wearing out its welcome with fans.
Exactly. So don't give it the Lost ending. Let it end on a good story. I mean, where they're going right now, the Whisperer War will more than likely, it's there. It's already there. People don't know. There's already been, the Whisperers already in the story. They just haven't been brought to the forefront. So the Whisperers are already in action. They were actually seen in 2 episodes, 15 and 16. They were shown in the finale too, and people don't know that. So we have the Whisperers on the cusp of coming into The Walking Dead. And then right after that, you have that woman, Georgie. That storyline is the New World Order, which is the current comic series going on in the comics. Ended with that. I mean, there's no point into dragging it on to the point where, you know, it's no, how should I say, interest in it. It's just like, okay, well, you know what? I've been watching this for 10 years. I might as well continue watching it. I just hope at the end of the day that they do right by the fans. I mean, they gave us 2 seasons that left us with feelings of, well, you know, I didn't like it, but I still watched it. I want to be, how should I say it? I want to be shocked. I wanted to go back to the seasons where, you know, it was anticipation. People were looking forward to the next episode. Not saying that it didn't happen in season 7 or 8, but cut out all the fluff. I know, you know, you want to spread out the storyline over X amount of time because you don't want it, and then you run out of source material. But at the end of the day, you could have did a better job with the filler storylines. So hopefully, and I think we actually, as far as the community and the fan base is concerned, they got really fortunate that Angela Kang took over the helm from Scott Gimple, because she has been a writer on The Walking Dead since season 3, and she has put out the best storylines or the best episodes since season 3. So hopefully, she's promising that it's going to go back to the glory days of season 5, and hopefully we'll get that. But as I said before, we at the fan base and myself personally, I'm in it to the end. I mean, we may not always be happy or satisfied with what we get at the end of the day, but you know what? A fan is a fan.
This is true indeed. And you are one of the biggest fans out there.
Yeah, one of the biggest fans. I have actually had the honor of going to a couple of the Walking Dead conventions, and I've met the majority of the main cast.
Well, that's awesome indeed. And I'll tell you what, it has been so great to talk to you. Once again, it's Daphine Matthew from the Walking Dead fan base, Facebook group, and Facebook page. If you are a fan of the series, you got to go and check out their pages today on Facebook. Sign up and be a part of that ever-growing community. Like I said, combined, it's over 70,000 individuals strong of Walking Dead fans that love to share their opinions on the show and the future of the series. Daphne, I just want to tell you, it's been tremendous talking to you about The Walking Dead. And I hope at some point in time, at your convenience, you can come back on our shows and talk more about that show that you love so much, The Walking Dead.
Anytime. If you want to talk about Fear the Walking Dead, we could talk about that. We can talk before The Walking Dead airs again in October. I am free to the community at large, and we can do it.
Sounds good, and I appreciate it. And that's actually going to be a thing now. Absolutely. We will get you on before the premiere of The Walking Dead coming up in September. And I'll tell you what, it'll be great to have you talking more TWD. Again, thank you so much, Daphne, for being a part of the show and, of course, a part of the pop culture cosmos.